Hello and welcome to NPC. That stands for Next Portable Console. It's a show about the games we take with us. I'm one of your hosts, returning from an extended break, Brendon Bigley. I'm here with John Voorhees.
Hello, Brendon. It's good to have you back and good to talk to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for holding down the fort last week. I'm also here with Federico Vitici, who also held down the fort last week.
Hello, Brendon. It's good to have you back.
How was the fort?
The fort was surprisingly empty with just me and John in it.
Yeah,
and
it's
it's weird for three people to just have a big fort to live in.
Yeah,
by
it's
ourselves.
especially weird when you have two people in the fort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
It was lonely in the fort.
You ever see that episode of Over the Garden Wall where there's two people who live in a mansion so big they don't realize they live in the same mansion? They think they live in two different mansions.
I've never seen that.
I've not seen that.
Is it a TV show? I've
Yeah.
never seen it.
Yeah.
Never seen it.
It's a wonderful, wonderful TV show. It's 2 hours long. You should watch it. Anyway, the whole thing is 2 hours long. Let's talk about the Steam Machine and not Over the Garden Wall.
Okay.
Because, boy, is there a lot of Steam Machine news, and we have to get through all of it. And today, we're recording this on the day that pre-orders go live.
Yeah, so right there. Let me stop you right there.
Yes.
First question. Did
Yes.
you put your email in the bucket to see if you get summoned?
Yes, I did. I put my
Same.
email in the bucket. Will I follow through is a second question
That is
I need to
also
answer.
that is also what I need to answer on the show today. What about you, John?
I did not because I
Ooh,
had decided
okay.
there was no way I was going to buy the Steam Machine.
Okay. All right. Please continue, Brendon.
Yeah. So I think we have to start from the beginning here, right?
Yeah.
So first of all, the funniest thing that happens if you're a person who makes a podcast, it happens to everybody inevitably. There's no avoiding this ever, but I loved listening to your guys' episode last week
Oh
where you
my
talked a
God.
lot about Steam Machine rumors.
As I
Like,
was
hey, maybe the embargoes will be out.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, so the Steam Machine was fully announced with pre-order information and pricing, full specs, which we already had access to most of. Nothing's really changed there. But also, what the bundles will be and a new pre-order process. Alongside all that information from Valve, we also got reviews. A bunch of reviewers have had the Steam Machine for, it seems like not that long. At
It
least
seems
based on-
like less than a week. I would say like 4 or 5 days maybe.
Yeah, it was pretty strictly embargoed, which is interesting. Enough for people to obviously do like Geekbench scoring and benchmarking and things like that. And honestly, there are some really interesting reviews. I do want to talk about those a little bit later. But the headline of all of this is that the base model Steam Machine, 512 gigabytes of storage, clocks in at $1,049 US.
Yeah.
If you
Yep.
get it with a controller, they bump that up to $1128.
Yeah, that's $79 more.
Yes, which is cheaper than if you bought the Steam controller separately,
I
right?
think so.
It
think
is,
so.
yeah.
Because it's like 99.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
100 if you get it by itself.
Yeah.
I think the bigger surprise to me, at least, was that the step up from the 512 gigabyte version is just a storage increase. There's nothing else going on there, so it really just is how much storage do you want preloaded on the device.
Yeah.
The one step up there is the 2 terabyte version for $1349, and then the maxed out version, I guess, would be that with a controller, which is $1,428, which is a lot of money, folks.
is.
Whoa.
More
So-
expensive than a PS5 Pro.
Yes, I will say on the high level, just immediate blanket statement I want to say at the beginning, because I
Yeah.
think this is important to denote before we talk about how expensive this is. This is not so far off from actual market price if you wanted to build something like this yourself.
It's
like
not.
this is a situation where like the parts that are in this thing, the reality of the market as it exists right now, this is a surprisingly like fair price, I would say.
Especially in that case at
Yes.
that size.
Right.
Yes.
With all of the special sauce that Valve has added, HDMI with CEC, which allows you to
Yep.
turn your TV on and off with the push
Right.
of a button, stuff like that. Like all of that stuff being bundled together in this small of a form factor that runs silently, et cetera, and is about as powerful as it is. $1049 is not the wildest price for that.
It's not yet. At the exact same time, we're talking about a machine that's roughly the equivalent of a PS5, a 6-year-old technology at roughly twice the price. So
Yes.
it's like you put those, it's both fair, but it's also a lot of money for what you're getting.
Yes. I think that's the one thing I want to highlight, because what I'm seeing in terms of people's reactions to this is mostly people being mad at Valve.
Yeah.
And the two forks off of that are like, well, first of all, if you want to be mad at anybody, maybe be mad at Sam Altman. And then secondarily, this is going to happen to PlayStation. This is going to happen to Xbox. This is going to happen to Nintendo. It's already happening to all of them in terms of the prices of all of these consoles being more expensive than they were when they came out. But we are on the precipice of the PlayStation 6. We are on the precipice of some kind of new Xbox, which they've already said is just going to be a beefy PC. Like, this is unfortunately the reality.
It's the new reality of this stuff. I mean, I went through this just recently looking at SSD prices on Amazon that are discounted for Prime Day. They're like 35-40% off, but they're 35 to 40% off, 4x what they were a year ago. But that's just where it is today. And I think with the Steam machine, one thing you can see in these numbers when you bump up from the 512 gigabytes to the 2 terabytes is that's a $300 difference. And if you look at SSD prices on the market, that's not like a price gouging bump up from 512 to 2 terabytes. That's a reasonable amount of money for that amount of storage in today's prices.
Yeah, a couple of things that I will mention. The other important difference is that Valve doesn't want to sell this machine at a loss. They don't want to subsidize the Steam machine like, say, Sony or Microsoft can do with the Xbox and PS5, because they also sell you subscriptions and they can afford to also make money on the games. I mean, obviously, Valve is also making money on the games sold via Steam, but they also want to sell the product with a profit, with a small profit on it. So that also is a factor. And they, in a bunch of interviews that they've done, they have also shed some light on the process that led to this delay and the price that we have today. And basically, Valve said, like, we went to a bunch of memory suppliers, like Samsung and Micron, for example. And those suppliers, they were like, yeah, we don't care. Like, take it or leave it. This is the monthly pricing. We don't want to do a contract with you. Either you buy this RAM and we're just going to sell you like a single 16 gigabyte of RAM stick, or you don't buy it, and we couldn't possibly care less. And reading between the lines, it seems very clear to me that Valve wanted to sell the Steam machine, the base model, at $799 and the 2 terabyte at $999, which would have made a lot more sense, I think. And so I saw a post fly by that I think quite nicely encapsulates this whole saga, which is good product, bad market. And that's, to an extent, I think that is very true right now. And then we can argue about the performance and the comparisons to the PS5, but I mean, let's face it, if this market wasn't so badly screwed up right now for memory and storage, this whole drama wouldn't happen. And the problem is that people try and put the blame on Valve, and I guess who's really to blame here? Like Brendon said, probably Sam Altman and Anthropic and all these all these companies.
Valve is a company with like 300 or 400 employees. They don't have the bargaining power with these.
Valve doesn't have investors, right? They're totally like
no, I don't believe so.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, I think the thing about the subsidizing that I think is also worth noting, there are two avenues here. Number one is what happened with the PlayStation 3. I think a lot of people maybe don't remember what happened with the PlayStation 3. The PlayStation 3 launched was immediately hacked into becoming a Linux server, then the United States military bought like 10,000 of them.
Yep.
And then turned them into a server farm. And that's basically the nightmare scenario for a console manufacturer, because they subsidized the PS3 was already very expensive, but they subsidized that price, took a loss on all of those consoles, and didn't make a dime on them ever again. And I think the thing about the Steam machine that I've needed to remind myself, because I find the idea of the Steam Machine so exciting, is that Valve doesn't think of it as a new entrant in the console market. They think of it as a PC first and a gaming console second.
Right.
And when you think of it through that lens, it makes sense why they wouldn't be subsidizing it. Like, I understand the logic there. Yes, they will make a lot of money off of people for every Steam game they buy, but the reality, again, is like they want people to be using it as a Linux box that also plays games very well. I think personally that's misguided.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's like the wrong approach entirely.
agree.
I think most of their customers want this as a console. I mean, and that's really why I decided not to even put my email in the hat, because yes, there is a value to this machine besides being a console, which is being a Linux computer. But I don't need a Linux computer. I don't want a Linux computer. I've got enough computer in my life. I wanted a small box to play games under my
I'm
TV.
swimming in computers,
I've
baby.
got enough computer.
I agree with you, though. I mean, look, and this is a case kind of the three of us having this podcast also, which is worth considering. But like, all of us recently in the past year have purchased devices that are Steam Machine adjacent that we can run Steam OS on in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Because when the Steam Machine was announced, we were excited enough that we wanted to try that, and that's the entire point of this podcast.
Yeah.
That also puts us in the exact position where, like, I paid $500 for a Steam Machine equivalent PC in October.
Yeah.
And that thing, I think, is now $1,400 if I wanted to go buy it again right now. And I'm good with that. Like, I'm good with that PC sitting under my desk. Like, do I really need the Steam Machine now? I think it's tough. It's tough to justify. It's really tough to justify. Like, I had to like talk to my wife and be like, is this even a possibility? What kind of stuff can I sell that I already own to like make up for it? And then once you start getting into that like bargaining side of things with a purchase, it's like, yeah, it's probably not worth it then.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's talk about this, right? So we've seen a bunch of the reviews. We've seen some of the performance videos. I think it's fair to say we're looking at a base PS5 level performance. Some games does slightly better. Some other games does slightly worse than a PS5. Let's assume it's a PS5 level performance, maybe less powerful than we were expecting this to be when we first heard of it last year. But now that it's official, now that we know the price, now that we know the performance, do we think it's and if we can set aside, if possible, the price consideration for a minute, and we just take a look at the product, do we think it's a good product?
Yes.
Do we think it's a good device to put in your living room to play games? And I think for me, the answer is yes. I think it's nice to have, especially, and I think most people are not paying attention to the form factor. Something so small.
Right.
I mean, let's say, so if we're saying, well, it's a PS5 from 6 years ago, yes, but have you seen a PS5 in real life?
I just pulled one from behind my TV yesterday, reorganizing my living room, and the thing is heavy and big.
Right.
Yeah.
The
So
Steam
this
Machine is a quarter of the size
Yes.
of the PS5.
Yes.
Yeah.
With much better support for HDMI CEC, with a giant heatsink that makes it, in theory, very, very, very quiet and cool.
Better industrial design, also.
Much better. It's a cube, which we
Yeah.
all love a good cube.
It doesn't look like an experimental skyscraper you'd see in a Pixar movie. It
I
looks-
still don't know
it
what
looks
they
like a
were
box.
going for with the PS5, like some kind of like, I don't know, futuristic monument was the idea?
Yeah,
I'm not
That's
sure.
kind of what it looks
Futuristic
like.
vampire rising from, I don't know.
I don't
Yeah,
know, what's-
weird vibe.
I don't know. Not as boring as an Xbox also. Like, I guess, I don't know, the Series X, maybe if you're a type of person, you can think the Series X is cool. I don't know, I just feel like a cube that is slightly taller than a GameCube is good design.
Yes.
And it obviously plays all kinds of games from Steam.
Yeah, huge catalog. And I would say that and I'm going to put the price back into the mix just for a
Yes.
second. Just for a second.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is why we need to have this conversation.
Because while I really think that this is a good device, we are talking about the equivalent of something that's roughly 6 years old, the PS5.
Yes.
And so what's the shelf life of a Steam machine going forward? And you have to consider that, given especially the amount of money you're going to pay to get one of these things. That's where I think the price comes in. Is like, what's the longevity of the Steam machine? If for instance you want to play games coming out in 2027, games coming out in 2028, yes, you have a huge back catalog, but you might be a little limited to just the back catalog to a degree here, I think.
I think one of the bigger problems that is now swimming around in my head the more I think about it is that it is simultaneously a niche device, right? Like, to know about the Steam machine and to want to purchase it means you probably know enough about computers or games to want these games to run at high resolutions and high frame rates, and that's the expectation of a new console, quote unquote, coming out in 2026. The weird flip side of it is I actually think it's probably more compelling to people who would not be in that niche.
I was gonna say that.
I think I consider, like, I was just talking to my Into the Aether co-host Steven yesterday about how he uses the Steam Deck these days, and he's like, I'm still pushing it beyond the bounds of what I thought was possible, right? He's playing games like Pragmata and Resident Evil Requiem on the Steam Deck.
On the Steam Deck?
And they still work,
wow,
okay. Which is amazing. And, a lot of that has to do with Capcom and the RE engine and that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But, like, for most people, they're not online enough to be mad about frame rates and resolutions. They just want to know, does the game run, yes or no? And for that, the Steam machine as it stands now will be able to do that with current AAA games, and will probably be able to do that for the next 3 to 5 years, realistically. Does that mean that they will run at full resolution, full frame rate? No. But will they run at, like, low resolutions and low frame rates with FSR and all this other stuff? Like, yeah, it would. Like, the Steam machine, if you bought it right now, again, price removed, would last you probably the next 3 to 5 years, no problem.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you are okay with playing games at low to medium settings, bump down the resolution, and then rely on FSR. We've seen that AMD wants to port FSR 4 to a bunch of platforms, and including SteamOS. So my problem is exactly what were you saying, Brendon? Like, it's a niche, geeky device with specs and performance that is not for the type of person who's into that niche.
Right.
Because the type of person who's really into video games and knows what FSR 3 or FSR 4 are, and knows what resolution scaling is, potentially not okay with playing a video game in front of their beautiful 4K OLED TV at 1080p upscaled.
Yeah.
And I think the issue lies in the fact that same person, the enthusiast, so to speak, was okay with the Steam Deck because the Steam Deck felt like a portable miracle.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And it was a great deal when it launched.
And it was a great deal when it launched. And 4 years later, it's still going. And the Steam machine, I think it's harder to make as compelling a case for it, because yes, it is a technical marvel. I wouldn't say it's a miracle, but it doesn't maybe have that wow effect of the Steam Deck in terms of like, oh, I can't believe I can get to run these games on this thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the price then comes back into consideration. It's like, yes, and for $1,000.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big, like, if the price could be removed completely from this conversation, then Valve could have a really solid argument. But I think when you factor in the price again, and when you consider how, as John points out, like, it's got the same specs of a 6-year-old device, maybe saying, no, but it's a really beautiful piece of hardware engineering, which I think it is. I think it doesn't have this. It doesn't hold the same ground as the same argument for the Steam Deck did 4 years ago.
Yeah. One thing, too, I wonder if, given what has happened in the market in general, whether Valve would have been better off pivoting to just going really high end with this thing, putting more VRAM in it and making it more performant in a way that is going to narrow the niche even more.
Yeah, if it's going to be niche, then baby, make it niche.
Yeah, exactly.
Niche, go all the way up to Strixhalo, baby. Do it.
And charge like $2,500 for it, right?
I mean, that is a really astute point. Actually, like if you need, if this is the situation, make the best out of it and say, well,
it is a little
2500.
starved for VRAM and some other things.
Yeah. Even Valve themselves have said that they don't think that this is a thing that's going to sell like significantly well. Like they don't consider this to be like a new entrant in the console space. And because of that, they think of it more as a showcase for, and this is what I really think it is, and I've said this many times, like it's a showcase for SteamOS. You know, the Trojan horse of this is that SteamOS is inside the horse, right? Like that's actually the most exciting part of this.
Yeah.
And when the Steam Machine launches, they're also launching SteamOS for basically for everything. Like you can just download it and run the desktop version of it, and you don't have to do the weird hacky thing that the three of us have done and download the Steam Deck version and try to install that on a PC anymore, thankfully. But they're also expanding support outside of AMD into more Intel parts as well, which is great. So I think that's the kind of the more exciting part. Like if you look at, talking about the people who are in this niche and would care the most about it, you look at somebody like Linus Tech Tips, right? Linus's review of this, pretty scathing, mainly because of the price. And literally the day after his review came out, he had another video that was like, what can I build for the same price and install SteamOS on, like the official version of SteamOS on? And he built the thing that blew this thing out of the water, which I think is, if you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, you are probably one of those people who would probably know how to do something like that. The flip side of this, I think, is actually the Giant Bomb review. I don't know if either of you watched that from Dan Reichert at Giant Bomb. It's a great review because he basically is like, I am a person who has the income to buy this, the need to buy something like this because, of what his job is. And he already had a PC set up in his basement that he was using for streaming and recording and all this kind of stuff, and wanted one that he could press a button to just turn the TV on, et cetera, like the HDMI CEC stuff. But then also at the end of his review, which I think was brilliant, he just played a bunch of footage from a bunch of different platforms side by side. Was like, here's, the PS5, here's the PS5 Pro, here's the Steam Deck, here's the Xbox or one of the Xboxes, here's the Steam Machine. It was all jumbled up, and he was just like, guess which one is which. I imagine you probably can't. It was Death Stranding 2 in the same spot in all of these, in all these platforms. He was like, I bet you can't guess which one is the Steam Machine. So what does that really mean at the end of the day, right? Like if you're just trying to play Death Stranding 2, for example, and the PS5 looks as good as the Steam Machine, do you need to be spending 2.5 times as much to get the Steam Machine? You need to come to that conclusion for different reasons than can it play Death Stranding 2 and make it look good.
And at that point, I think, and I am that type of person. If you really put a value on design and size, I think that comes into consideration because with my limited space in the living room, I have this cabinet under the TV, and that's where I keep my modem from my ISP, my Wi-Fi router, and all of my home automation like hubs and the Ethernet switch and the Apple TV and the Philips Hue bridge and my NAS. Like it's a mess in there, but space is at a premium. And right now, with the things that I have bought over the past 6 months, like a new NAS for Time Machine backups from me and Sylvia, I physically don't have the space for a PS5 anymore. Since I sold my PS5 Pro, I no longer have the space because I use the space for other things. There would be space for a small cube.
Yeah, I'm in a similar position now too,
And I think if you are that type of person where like you think, well, I would like to play Steam games in my living room, but I don't really want to put a PC in the living room out in the open, especially if you have a modicum of taste. You're not going to put a PC tower in the living room. And if you are, I mean, more power to you. If you are, I am not allowed to put electronics of that kind out in the open in my own house, which I understand. Sylvia actually has a really good point. They're arguing.
I used to have the HP in the living room, and then I moved it out because I was like, this looks horrible.
Yeah, I mean,
doesn't look good.
So if you are that type of person and you think, well, you know what, actually, paying $200 more is actually worth it for me because it's the only object that would physically fit in the space that I have. And that is, this is maybe the sort of the Apple mindset speaking for me. Like, I do appreciate something that is a tiny little miracle of hardware engineering. A cube built around a giant heatsink with all components.
And a big fan. Yeah.
And a big fan.
Big, slow, quiet fan.
While still being able to replace the SSD if you want. Like, that is something that I can appreciate, but not everybody cares about that, and it's fine.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning just on that point. You can expand the storage with a micro SD card, which is great. You can expand the internal storage if you want to with the new hard drive. And you can also expand the RAM.
Oh, you can expand the RAM?
Yeah. Or you can swap the RAM and then not expand it. I don't think there are extra
2 slots, right? I think.
Yeah. Which is nice. In there's a world in which like you get this thing and you hold on to it. I think my kind of final thought on this.
You just gave me an idea. You just gave me...
I'm looking at
you can see my brain.
He has some sticks of RAM lying around is what he's thinking.
I'm looking down at my desk and my PC with 96 gigs of RAM.
Yeah.
This is from a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, maybe if I take out one of them. I'm sorry, keep going.
I think one of my considerations about, before the pre-orders open today, do I buy one, yes or no?
Yeah.
Is the feeling that I have had time and time again this year, which is thank God I bought this when I did. I keep having that revelation over and over again. Yep. I have it about the Switch 2, about the Thor, about this Steam Machine adjacent PC that I have, about the B-Link that I have sitting under my television right now, which is what I was planning on replacing with the Steam Machine.
Yeah.
Basically, everything that I own has dramatically increased in price. We're recording this on a day where Apple has even announced increased pricing on all of their devices, basically. And I guess one of the questions I'm considering is like, what if this doesn't get better anytime soon?
What if it gets worse?
What if it gets worse? And what if this is the lowest price the Steam Machine will ever be? Like, will I be kicking myself 6 to 8 to 12 months from now because I didn't buy the Steam Machine right now? I hate that I have to do that calculus in my head. Like, that sucks.
Yeah,
but
you can't not really,
John, go to the website and put in your email.
Oh,
I don't know. Maybe we are. I don't know. Hey, maybe
I'm
we're
fine
not
peer pressuring you guys. I'm not. Never the audience. Don't.
Yeah.
This is just for John and Federico.
Yeah.
We're just doing this to ourselves.
Hey, look, maybe this whole conversation is useless because maybe we will not get the email that we've been selected to give Valve some money.
What's the deal? It's a random drawing, right?
Yeah,
it's like you put in your email and then they select randomly.
How many people are going to sign up for this thing? Is this going to be a hot
No, I think it'll be a lot
item?
of people. I think it'll still be a lot of people. Because I think that they don't have that many of them. I think that there's going to be...
Yeah, look at the controller, right? Like,
the
controller's backed up until next year.
Right. Yeah, the controller's backed up for 6 months plus. Yeah. I do think the Steam OS of it all is really very interesting here and maybe worth talking about just a little bit more because I know Valve also said they're going to be working with NVIDIA now. So, between AMD and NVIDIA, and we've got SteamOS 3.8 officially out of beta.
Yep.
And I have not installed it on my mini PC yet, but I'm thinking about it. I mean,
I've had it as beta for a while on my Legion Go 2. It's great. I love it.
I've had Bazite on my mini PC, but I'm thinking of switching that over this weekend or maybe the following week. So
I have SteamOS on my ROG Ally X and my B-Link, and it's great on both. And I have Bazite on the other PC.
The moment that Valve figures out NVIDIA GPU support for SteamOS, I'm gonna flash it on my gaming PC so fast. I hate Windows so much at this point, and yesterday I spent like an hour trying to understand why it was stuck in a loop, and it's always some kind of Windows 11 update. If they do SteamOS 4 with NVIDIA support, it's going to be glorious. I really hope that it's not like a multiple years away type of thing. Obviously, SteamOS so far only supports AMD GPUs, although there is early support for, and that actually surprised me. They already rolled out support for the new Intel chips that we talked about a while back, which we will have to follow up on that because that MSI Claw with the G3 Extreme got surprisingly positive reviews, and the performance looks insane. But we're saving that topic for another episode.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not. I don't know. Maybe it's not that difficult for Valve to add NVIDIA support. Maybe they've been working on this for a few years now. We have no idea. But they said they're working on it. So at some point it will happen. And at some point, now that will be interesting to follow. At some point, people like me, with the gaming PC and an NVIDIA GPU inside, you will be able to totally get rid of Windows. If you are okay with the games that are on Steam, obviously.
Mark my words, in 10 to 15 years,
okay,
somebody will put SteamOS on the Nintendo Switch too.
No, probably I would follow a more aggressive timeline than that.
You think sooner?
I think sooner. I think especially
Like
now I think within 5, especially now with people that have like AI agents. The moment that one of these like new AIs finds a security hole in any modern console, like that is another topic that we should keep an eye on, like the cybersecurity aspect of jailbreaking consoles. This thing will be I predict it will become a problem. I wouldn't be shocked to see a Switch 2 jailbreak within the next year, maybe. I mean, given what these systems are capable of.
Yeah, and just let them run at it. I mean, they don't get tired. They don't have to go to sleep at night. I mean, you just keep
and they
running against.
They don't get sued, unlike GeoHot from Sony. Remember that? Like when PlayStation... Right. Yeah. That guy is also doing AI now, by the way. But in any case, so... As we're recording this, the pre-order lottery will officially close in less than 3 hours from now. And in theory, later today, we will receive our emails. Well, at least Brendon and I will probably receive an email saying, congratulations, you've been approved to college, or not. So we will get our admission letter, and it sounds like Brendon will go ahead and buy one.
I don't know. I really don't know. It's gonna be a.
You're gonna go with the flow in the moment.
If you do, would you go with the base model or would you go with?
Well, you have to put in your email for the model that you want.
Yes.
Right.
So now I'm stuck with the 2 terabyte one.
Oh, did you do that? I think you have a better shot at getting one.
That was
because
my
of
thought. That was my thought.
I initially put my name down for 2 terabyte with controller because it was just like the highest.
2 terabyte without.
And that's actually probably maybe the better move. So I think the one that everyone will do, which is 512 with controller.
Yeah.
Which will lower my chances of getting the email, but if I do, it will be a game time decision. I will need to decide when.
I wonder if they're gonna do like, hey, you didn't get selected for this one, but we can upsell you to the 2 terabyte.
That would really mess up their lottery. I hope they don't do that.
Yeah,
they should make it hard.
Well. We'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens, and we'll talk about it next week, right? On XL, we're gonna do something completely different. We're gonna talk about a bunch of other news that we didn't get to cover on this Steam Machine only episode, and Brendon has something to show us.
Yes, I made you a promise in February, and I'm gonna make good on it.
Okay.
Do you remember this, John?
I do not remember what he's talking about. I have
no
idea.
I have no idea. Okay. All right. Well, you will see whatever that is on NPC XL, which you can get for just $5 a month on our Patreon. Just search for Next Portable Console on Patreon, and you'll find us there. And that's it for this week's episode. John, where can people find us on the open web?
All over the internet.
Over? Okay,
yeah,
that's
all
good.
over the internet. You've got Brendon Bigley at wavelengths.online and overworld.vg and his podcasts and everything. And then you've got me and Federico over at macstories.net, App Stories, which is another podcast we do about apps, and a bunch of other places because we're all also on social media. Just search for our names and you'll find us there. Bye, everybody.
Bye.